Charlie no longer wanted to watch her acting at this time, and even no longer wanted to be patient with her anymore, so he skipped her and said to Claire, "My wife, I'll go to the orphanage first. Eat at home." Claire hurriedly stood up and said, "I'll go with you. I haven't seen Aunt Lena for a long time. The last time I went to see Aunt Lena in the hospital was a few months ago. I still miss her." To say that Claire really fulfilled the duties and responsibilities of a good wife. Not only did she support Charlie treating Aunt Lena, she also often went to the hospital with him to visit and take care of Aunt Lena. Just like Charlie, she was very respectful to Aunt Lena. Aunt Lena also liked her very much, almost treating her as her daughter-in-law. Seeing that Claire was going to see Aunt Lena with herself, Charlie nodded with satisfaction and said, "Then let's go together. When Aunt Lena called me last time, she asked about you. I should miss you a lot." Claire stood up and said, "Then let's go now." As soon as Elaine heard that Claire was going to go with Charlie, she said pitifully, "Good daughter, are you angry with your mother? Do you even want to ignore your mother?" Claire looked at Elaine and said seriously, "Mom, I really hope you can reflect on this experience and change your personality. Otherwise, you will definitely suffer in the future." When Elaine heard her say this, she immediately sat on the ground and said, "What's the point of saying I'm alive? My only relative, my dear girl, is no longer facing me. The police shouldn't let me go. Come out and let me die in the detention center." If it were to be kept in the past, Claire would have softened and compromised when she saw her mother being so aggressive, but this time she understood that if her mother always had this character, then she would suffer a loss sooner. She can't condone her temperament anymore. So she said to Elaine, "Mom, think about it alone, I'll leave with Charlie first. By the way, Charlie also cooked the noodles for you. Don't forget to serve them out." After finishing speaking, she said to Charlie, "Let's go." Charlie nodded, took Claire out of the house, and drove her to the orphanage. On the way, Charlie bought a bunch of flowers, another fruit basket, and handwritten a greeting card for Aunt Lena. When he came to the gate of Orus Hill Welfare Institute, Charlie parked his car in the parking space on the side of the road. Looking at the slightly outdated gate, he was in a daze, and he couldn't help but feel a sense of time going back and space dislocation. He stood here, as if for an instant, he overlapped with certain scenes in his memory. The scenes that flashed continuously were the softest, happiest and most precious memories deep in his heart. He still remembers the scene of his first visit to the orphanage. When he was 8 years old, he lost his parents and was displaced on the street. Aunt Lena, who was like an angel on earth, brought him here, then held him with one hand and pointed at the gate, saying very lovingly, "Child, don't be afraid, this will be your home from now on." Charlie still remembers this extremely warm scene even after many years. Thinking of this, Charlie's face also showed a rare happy expression. Even the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. Seeing him with a smile, Claire couldn't help saying, "Today you seem to be very happy." Charlie nodded slightly and said, "Yeah, since Aunt Lena became ill, I have always been particularly worried. I tried to get money everywhere, but I didn't collect enough medical expenses for the kidney transplant. Had it not been for a coincidence of fate, Aunt Lena would have left me." Claire recalled the scene when Charlie whispered to her grandma to borrow money from her grandma in order to collect medical expenses for Aunt Lena. At that time, he really felt sorry for this. Since he was young, he had been ill-fated and left the man. It's a pity that he didn't have any ability at that time, and couldn't spend so much money to help. Fortunately, later, Aunt Lena, the G people had their own vision. Someone solved her medical expenses and sent her to the best union hospital in the country for treatment. Thinking of this, Claire couldn't help asking, "By the way, you said that someone paid Aunt Lena all the medical expenses. Who is that person? How could he be so generous?" Aunt Lena went to Fairview for treatment. It costs at least $2 or $3 million for a trip, right? Charlie nodded and said, "I heard that it cost a total of $3 million. As for who paid the money, I am not too sure, but I heard that it was also the person Aunt Lena had saved before." Of course, Charlie couldn't say that the money for Aunt Lena's treatment was paid by himself, because at that time he was still a standard poor sling. It was impossible to get a huge sum of $3 million, so he couldn't explain it clearly. So he could only sigh. I knew that showing others how to make money by showing feng shui, I should try it when your aunt was sick. The two were talking, a pleasantly surprised voice suddenly sounded in their ears, Brother Charlie. When he turned around and looked around, he saw a tall and thin figure in the orphanage. It turned out to be Xiaofeng. After a few years of absence, Xiaofeng has become a big girl. She is in her early 20s. She is more than 1.7 meters tall, and her figure is no less than that of those models. Although the dress is very simple and plain, and the face is facing the sky, it can give people a crystal clear, icy and clean feeling. Charlie couldn't help but marvel at her. It's really the 18th change. Is this still the little girl who had been a follower in the orphanage back then?